When talking about the Imperial Fists and their successors, we usually think of stubborn warriors who treat Bobby G. Codex Astartes, the textbook on how to be a good guy, as nothing more than toilet paper. That is simply the trademark grit of Dawn's bloodline. Yet, from that very same headstrong lineage emerged the boys with the glowing red gauntlets, the Crimson Fists. You could almost call them a buggy version of the Ultramarines. Why that label? Because the Crimson Fists sport a signature dark blue armor and, surprisingly, they don't hate the Codex. Quite the opposite. They respect and apply Guilliman's tactical doctrines with professional precision. Even though they were founded at the same time as the Madmen of the Black Templars, the Crimson Fists are much more reserved. They aren't quite as famous as their zealous brothers who are constantly screaming for vengeance in the Emperor's name. However, don't let that calm exterior fool you. Being less famous doesn't mean they are weak. In fact, it is quite the opposite. Their punches hurt, a lot. While the Black Templars fight with a burning faith, the Crimson Fists fight with ice-cold focus. They are the perfect blend of the Imperial Fist's legendary resilience and the Ultramarines' organizational discipline. They are top-tier brawlers who know how to dig in during the direst situations and flip the script through pure grit and tactical mastery. So, why does a descendant of Dawn look so much like an Ultramarine? And why does such a badass chapter often get overshadowed in the lore? Today, we will dive into the heart-wrenching tragedies of Arwain's world and discover why these Crimson Fists deserve to be the true icons of Space Marine endurance. Let's get into it. Let me set the scene for you. It is the aftermath of the most horrific mess in human history, the Horus Heresy. Primarchs are dead, legendary legions are shattered, and the Emperor, humanity's only hope, is now little more than a flickering existence upon the Golden Throne. Even Rogel Dawn, the most stoic and iron-willed of the sons, finally broke after carrying his father's corpse to that golden prison. In their grief, the Imperial Fists lost themselves. They abandoned their signature defensive doctrines and fell into a state of widespread mental instability. This psychological collapse created a deep divide. Some chose to weaponize their obsession, turning their sorrow into a murderous crusade for vengeance. They became the Black Templars under the legendary Sigismund. A few clung to their yellow armor to continue following their primarch. Others became weird, painting their armor purple and slowly drifting toward a heretical mindset, much like the Soul Drinkers. However, amidst a collective driven mad by loss, one chapter remained remarkably stable, the Crimson Fists. As a second founding chapter of the Imperial Fists, their prestige is undeniable. But what impresses me most isn't just their reputation, it's the lineup of original chapter masters that Dawn's successors produced. Honestly, other chapters don't have a chance in comparison. If the Black Templars had the peerless Sigismund, if the Executioners had the incredibly cool Fafnir Ran, then the Crimson Fists were led by a name just as legendary, Alexis Pollux. Pollux was a literal giant, both in stature and intellect. While he wasn't as flashy as Sigismund, he was a living legend in a different way. Through methodical strategy, he didn't rely on individual flair or divine favor, but on cold, hard tactics. His peak achievement was defeating and nearly capturing Perturabo in a massive space battle, a feat few in the galaxy, including his own father, could claim. Pollux was stern, pragmatic, and level-headed even on the brink of total annihilation. It was this calm mindset that forged the Crimson Fists, a chapter that is the perfect intersection of the Imperial Fists' resilience and the Ultramarines' discipline and organization. So, what makes the Crimson Fists different from the Imperial Fists? As their name suggests, they have red hands. This stems from a bloody heresy-era custom. Captains would cut their palms and shake hands with each other and their primarch to let their blood mingle. This act symbolized brotherhood and was believed to grant a spark of the Primarch's own power. To honor this tradition, battle brothers paint one or two hands red depending on their rank, a way to tell the enemy, these are the toughest, most veteran fighters in the galaxy. In terms of combat, they aren't much different from the Imperial Fists, but they punch with far more enthusiasm. They dig in deeper and hold their ground to the bitter end. Under Alexis Pollux, the Crimson Fists charged into the scouring like a storm, sweeping away the traitorous filth. They achieved victory after victory, famously crushing the Exodite Eldar on Uralek Prime because they dared to be cooler than them while riding dinosaurs. Pollux led the chapter for 8 centuries before falling to alien venom after taking a hit to the head, so remember to wear your helmets, boys. But even in his final moments, he displayed an almost irrational will. He survived for days just to uncover the method to defeat the enemy and pass on his final orders. After Pollux came the era of Master Questra. Don't feel bad if you haven't heard of him. His only major mark on history was getting absolutely splattered during the War of the Beast. That was a dark time when the Orcs became impossibly powerful. Primarch Vulcan reappeared only to die again, and the entire Imperial Fists chapter went extinct, forced to rebuild from their successor chapters. However, following that dark period, The Crimson Fists proved their status as the ultimate kings of grit during the Age of Apostasy. They led a crusade that retook 84 worlds, though by the end of the bloody work, only 128 warriors remained, a staggering 90% reduction in their numbers. As a reward for their devotion and service to the Imperium, the Crimson Fists were granted Rin World as their home planet. Rin World is a standard Imperial world with a somewhat uninspired naming convention. The planet is Rin, the continent is Rin Land, and the capital is New Rin City. However, peace is a luxury that rarely lasts when a Space Marine chapter is involved in a major event within the 40k universe. Everything began to spiral when a scout named Kenan disobeyed direct orders and tried to snipe an Orc warboss. The shot was blocked by a force field, revealing the chapter's position and leading to the slaughter of nearly the entire company. Kenan survived but was turned into a servitor for his insubordination. The warboss then launched a full invasion, but at the time, the Crimson Fists were at full strength with powerful fortifications. To make their struggle more epic and tragic, an absurd disaster occurred. One of their own thermonuclear missiles made a U-turn and struck their own fortress monastery. The blast destroyed the base and killed over half the chapter. The survivors, led by Pedro Cantor, fought across the planet to reach the capital. By the time they arrived and prepared to fight, they were down to only 20% of their original numbers. They held out for 18 months until reinforcements arrived, at which point only about 100 Crimson Fists remained alive. Rather than disbanding, Pedro and his brothers began the grueling process of rebuilding the chapter from scratch. But the tragedy of these red-handed warriors didn't end there. While they were traditionally used against Eldar and Orcs, they have recently spent more time fighting and winning against Chaos. After the fall of Cardia, a massive demonic horde invaded Awen's world, undoing centuries of progress made by Pedro and his men. The world seemed doomed until Roboot Guilliman arrived with Primari's reinforcements. Acting like a protagonist, Guilliman drove the demons off the planet and saved the chapter. Following a heartwarming reunion where the Primarch told Pedro his father would have been proud, the chapter received Primari's Marines to fix their manpower issues. Despite their history of being reduced to 10% strength, the Crimson Fists never sit idle to recover. For example, a strike team of only 30 Marines once destroyed thermal macroreactors on a planet, creating a firestorm that killed 86% of a billion-strong Cornite army. After all these manpower crises, you might think they would learn the value of preserving their numbers. But they certainly didn't. The first thing Pedro did after getting reinforcements was taunt nearby Orc warbosses to test his new troops and eliminate the greenskins he despises. They were last seen at the defending the vital world of Vigilus from Orcs and Genestealers. Let's look at some of their top-tier fighters. Pedro Cantor, the 29th Chapter Master. He is a truly kind man who constantly struggles with the moral conflict of being an efficient warrior versus saving civilians. He favors practical gear over flashy weapons, using a master-crafted, wrist-mounted Stormbolter named Dawn's Arrow. Alessio Cortez, known as the Immortal, he has reportedly broken 99% of the bones in his body at least twice. He once lost an arm in a fight with a warboss, but he ignored the wound and killed the monster moments later by shoving a cracked grenade down its throat while the creature was gloating over its victory. Rin Might. This is not a person, but a legendary land raider. When its crew was killed during the invasion of Arwayan's world, its machine spirit took control, firing every weapon it had until it ran out of ammo and then charging the Orcs like a madman. When it broke down, it opened its hatches to lure the Orcs inside before locking them in and self-detonating its engines to wipe them out. It is easily one of the most badass tanks in 40k history. The Crimson Fists don't rely on flashy skills or strange mutations, making them one of the most interesting Space Marine chapters. Their appeal comes from how they face adversity while maintaining their humanity in a cruel galaxy. Unlike the cold ruthlessness of some chapters or the stubborn independence of the Space Wolves, the Crimson Fists find a middle ground. They are intensely devoted to their duty but find no joy in performing distasteful or cruel deeds, such as when they were forced to cull the Marine Vigilant chapter. A prime example of their character is when they were ordered to cull the Marine Vigilant chapter. This wasn't a slaughter fueled by zeal or excitement, it was a painful duty, carried out with heavy hearts and deep sorrow for their lost brothers. To them, honor isn't found in the act of killing itself, but in the disciplined execution of justice. If I had to use one phrase to describe the Crimson Fist's combat style, it would be the king of resilience, with a brain. They don't just charge out and soak up damage blindly. Instead, they apply methodical tactics, squeezing every bit of utility out of their limited resources to transform themselves into an unshakable fortress, all while striking back with the hardest hits possible. As a result, they frequently find themselves with a high extinction rate, yet somehow, a miracle always seems to pull them back from the brink of total annihilation. Strong yet humble, disciplined yet compassionate. That is the irresistible allure of these red fists. They prove that you don't need to be the strongest or the most eccentric to become a legend. So, what about you? Is the grit and unique soul of the Crimson Fists enough to make them your favorite chapter? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That's all for today's video.